Welcome to Build It Live 2022. How's it going today, Ben?
Hello. Yeah, it's good. It's good. As you may have seen, my background is different from last week. I'm in Germany today, down in Frankfurt, at an event here. So it's actually quite warm. Now, when I think of Germany, I always think of raining. So it's quite toasty and warm, which is nice. About 30 degrees, which doesn't make sense. I realize in American. So
Right.
what is that, like 70,
Yeah,
75?
70 degrees, 70,
Yeah.
75.
There we go. It's kind of like double, add a bit on is kind of what I've always just worked out at. So, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah, it's all good.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you again today, Ben, and it's part two to our journey here, talking about limits and liability and how it's not good for business, which is really an important topic for MSPs today. So thanks again to all those that you don't know. Ben is the director of cybersecurity for ThreatLocker, and we are excited to have him here today as we talk about a whole bunch of cool stuff. We're going to have some really good fun today. We got a couple of things. Again, thanks. ThreatLocker is such a great company. We really do appreciate everything you guys do for not only the community, but also for the MSP world. And one of the cool things they're doing today is also they have a really neat code for those of you that are joining us today. It's good till the end of the week. And that code is vulnerability 200. Let's see if who can say that twice, like vulnerability 200. Ben, you want to give it a shot?
I'm not even going to try. Like I will totally mess that up. Yeah, not a chance.
So for everybody that's here with us today, vulnerability is your code. Go click register for Build It Live 2022, July 27th through 29th. Thank you, ThreatLocker, for that. That'll give you a discount code to get you guys in the event. So that being said, obviously you're joining us in July, Ben, and I'm really excited to have you. This conversation that we're going to have today is super important. And I think that, just as we talked about last week, we understood a little bit about living off the land, all of the different things that we needed to be kind of discussing from a security perspective and some of the things that we may or may not think about. Today, I think limits, liability, and vulnerability are really important topics. And I think that as we start to think about that, you know, how do we secure ourselves in apps from vulnerability and start to think through zero trust is one of the big things. But before we get into it, I know that there's a lot of topics we're going to talk about today. And one of the things we like to start off with is trivia. And so, Ben, last week you gave us a pretty sweet one, man. It stumped quite a bit of the people that were joining us in. So, what's the
Yes.
one you got today, man? What are we doing today?
So how many CVEs were reported? I don't want to say released because there's always CVEs we don't know. How many CVEs were recorded or reported in 2021?
All right. How many CVEs were reported in 2021?
For those who are unaware, CVE, critical vulnerability. That's the easiest
Yep.
term for that one.
Yep. Common vulnerabilities and exposures for 2021. How many? Okay. So those of you that are out there, do me a favor. Don't Google it. If you know, then go ahead and look. 2 lucky people are going to win 2 tickets that Ben is going to give away at the end of the show. So your comments in the chat are going to potentially win you some tickets today. So let's get started and talk about it, Ben. Let's just jump right into it here. How do we secure apps from vulnerabilities, and where are we at in zero trust? Like, let's just start talking about where are we at and how do we think through this?
Yeah, I think when it comes to securing apps and against these kind of vulnerabilities, we first need to come at it from the angle that we are already under attack. Now, we know that threat actors aren't slowing down. We've seen that the amount of attacks have been increasing year on year on year. And it is only going to get worse. I mean, web apps at this minute in time, we're seeing a 10% rise on web app attacks that are going on. So it is only going to keep going. So I think first we need to understand that the threat actors are already likely here. Yeah. And then what is it we can do to try and mitigate the damage that they can cause to make life a little bit harder for them so that they are not able to take as much of my data. They can't attack my systems as well. And that is obviously where zero trust from my belief is the best way to go ahead and solve this. We spoke about last week how Zero trust can help protect you against things like malware, ransomware, etc. But zero trust can obviously help to protect against app vulnerabilities. We utilize a tool called ring fencing in part of our solution. And essentially, ring fencing allows you to be able to allow apps to work, but limit what they can access, whether it be PowerShell being able to natively access your files and folders. And that's a pretty terrible idea. We don't want that to happen because PowerShell can access all of my data. Well, eek. If someone gets access to PowerShell, that's very quickly my data they've now got access to. So utilizing a ring fencing tool as such, you would be able to go ahead and actually block that access to certain files and folders by default. Yeah. And what that's doing there is, again, mitigating the damage that these vulnerabilities can cause. So we see a multitude of different vulnerabilities that will come out, whether it be for remote code execution, privilege escalation, etc. And I always like to be very clear, you can't stop vulnerabilities in that way, but what you can do is try to mitigate them or stop them as much as possible. And it's about having the tools in place to be able to effectively do that.
And I think it's really important to understand, like, I remember a time back in my early days as an engineer, we had the command and control where we would lock down infrastructures and we had full control over it. So we knew what was coming in and what was going out, and we stopped it at the firewall. Obviously, now with our increased threat surface by everyone doing BYOD and all these other things, you have to start like trying to, bring all those apps down to and containerize those things, because now we have devices that are everywhere, right? And I think that we often common mistake the fact that we believe software is secure. And we think that, right? So a lot of people that go out and buy it, it's like, hey, this is the next best great thing. I'm going to put it on my machine and we should be good to go. I don't think that's the case anymore, Ben.
No, I think the thing that we need to realize is that the local network is truly no more. The local network doesn't exist anymore. Exactly as you were saying, yeah. BYOD. We have users who are working off their own devices. We have users who are working from home. We have become a very, due to recent pandemics, we're not naming any of them. We have become a very much a remote workforce. And because of that, we have people working from home. We have people working, like me, from hotel rooms. We have people who are traveling the world and still able to do their roles. And it has essentially destroyed what we view a local network as. Now, our common network that we're sharing is the internet as such. And that's pretty terrifying because, you have all these gangs who are active on the web. You have sponsored nations, so you have nation-state sponsored gangs who are active, who are trying to attack you, whether that be by North Korea, China, Russia, Eastern Europe, etc. Who are all out here looking for these vulnerabilities, looking for ways to be able to infect you with malware, looking for ways to be able to attack.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely it's the scope at which critical vulnerabilities are being found and they are being utilized by these threat actors is only growing, especially with our more remote world as such. So yeah.
It's interesting to think that, for so long, and I hear this all the time because I talk with a number of people, and I'm sure most of us, whether you be an MSP business owner or you be a technology solution provider, one of the big things I hear, and I hear it often at family, during holiday events where we go home, and it's always a tirade of my family saying, well, software, when they make it, shouldn't they build it secure? And I always find that question, yes, technically we feel that it should be in the IT world, but there's so many components that go into building it. What you see is such a small part of what it really is.
Yeah, a little bit of personal Ben time. I am an avid Reddit user. I am a Reddit junkie. I love Reddit in every way. I was surfing through Reddit earlier, and I think I went on Programmer Humor, and they had a meme on there that essentially was, if you're a programmer, you realistically stop moaning about games software that have bugs because you understand how hard it is to build these tools without the problems.
Right.
I think IT people are often pretty good at understanding that as well, because I don't realistically these tools aren't built with the idea of I have a hole in the solution that someone can exploit. It's not built like Log4j was not built with the idea that you could that someone would be able to do remote code execution. That was
Right.
not the initial plan.
Yeah.
And the guys at Log4j went ahead and solved that. They released releases to be able to fix that as soon as it comes out. But by the nature of creating something, we are also creating something that's really strong, but we are at the same time going to create something that has weaknesses that people can exploit.
Right.
So I always find that kind of topic very interesting, because there's a clear divide between technical and non-technical people, I think,
Oh yeah.
as to whether or not they just expect that software should always be at its most secure.
Yeah.
When realistically, it's, as much as we can always wish for it to be, it is sadly not always going to be.
Right. And I think that, here's the thing, right? And I don't know if a lot of people recognize, and even MSP business owners, a lot of them, we deliver technology, whether, like even for me, I do have a coding and programming background, but at the same token, I knew that wasn't the life I wanted to live. I decided to go into server management, maintenance, and monitoring, right? And I knew there was a path between networking and server environments, right? So I made the Y in the road. And we often forget, if you don't have that generalistic knowledge of how things are built, you don't know what goes into an MSI package, right? You don't understand what's all inside of there. You think that it's an EXE. There's a reason why marketplaces are digitally signed now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That is it. My dad is an engineer. I have no idea what he does. All I know is he plays with metal all day, every day. Like, that is as much as I know. He
Yeah.
does not do computers, bless him. He is not a computer person. So it's, you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
And it's really hard, I think, for us as to delivering solutions and products to customers, because obviously, as an MSP business owner, one of the big things is to enable our customers, right, and empower them to be successful and find ways to get that software to work, and then try to put some security around it. And I think that that's where we have to be really careful, right? I talked about, the title of this whole webinar is how vulnerability is not good for your operations, right? And it's really, really, really doing that due diligence up front to understanding what that looks like, right? And what vulnerabilities you do have. And what are some of the resources that you might have, Ben, that they might be able to find on the internet to find out whether or not some of the programs that they're looking for might be vulnerable or not?
Great question. So there's a numerous few websites. What I could probably do is share them out. Is there a way we can kind of send them out? Is that
Yeah,
the
we can throw them in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, I will try and pull those up in a moment, and then we can get them sent out. But I mean, the number one way to be able to stay up to date, I'm a huge fan of the Register. I find that Register is an excellent place to be able to go and check this out. IT focused tools, CRN is another big one. I quite like CRN. They're pretty good at being able to. There is another one. Is it the Bleeping Computer? Yes.
Yeah, Bleeping
Computer. I find those three are very, very good at being able to kind of bring these out. If they don't, obviously, often that they're all publications, so they don't realistically find any of these CVs, but they're excellent at raising awareness. There was a new CV that came out about 3 weeks ago ish, for 7-zip, which is obviously an application that I would expect most people have on their machines. I think I found out about it through one of those publications. So they are very, very good at kind of keeping their finger on the pulse and finding any of these new CVs. But I mean, onwards from there, partner with vendors who can help you with that. ThreatLocker, we're always looking for kind of new CVs and any key CVs we want to alert the public for. I know Huntress are also very, very good at that as well, and other security vendors as well. So definitely always partner with your vendors, because they're going to be the ones who are able to help you with this. At the end of the day, vendors should be trying to help you grow as much as possible, and educating, because obviously MSPs, they don't always have the time to be able to spend all day, every day looking at the new CVEs that have come out and how they can protect themselves. And I think that does come down to the job of the vendor as well, to a certain extent.
And I think that that's really important. As we talk about, that is, obviously the trivia question of the day is how many CVEs were identified in 2021. So for those, again, 2 free tickets for those of you that are out there in the audience. We got two people that are going to win today. But, one of the things too is that since 1995, and I found this stat online, which is really interesting because coming from tech and delivering products and services to customers, being an MSP business owner myself, I know how the struggle is to, you're trying to do other things and you're not really paying attention to a lot of the liability that you might be inferring. And it was kind of staggering to find out that there was over 130,000 since 1995, 130,000 common vulnerabilities and exposures. That's pretty staggering, and most of them were within products and services that I often sold to customers.
100%, 100%. I mean, I'm not going to give the answer away here, hopefully, but this should give maybe a little bit of a clue. So far this year, there's been around 7,000 CVEs that have been reported.
This year.
Just so far this year alone.
So we're in May.
Yeah, we're in May. Like it's not great. But the way I explain this generally, we are becoming a more dependent society on software. We're using software in day-to-day lives that frankly we don't necessarily always think about that uses software. And as that happens, we are going to find more and more vulnerabilities. That is just part and parcel of our more connected world that we are in now. And I mean, when it comes to, you were saying that there were CVs and software that you were deploying. Kind of.
Right.
I think there's a stat that I've got. I think is 90% of CVEs. Let me find it. Yeah, 90% of active applications that we're actually using in our day-to-day life have active CVEs. So the thing is, this could be ranging from very, very minor to highly critical panic, panic stations, everyone run kind of thing.
Right.
So it's not all up there. It could be very, very minor as well. But yeah, 90% of active applications that we're using in our day-to-day life have active CVEs. And I think that really shows kind of how connected we are in this world.
And I want to illustrate something. I think that it's really important to understand how we got here, right? Because a lot of us are, we're fairly integrated into the technology stack of this world and in this era. But the next generation, right, the millennials and the Gen Zs, right, they are completely immersed in it, right? So I anticipate that it'll grow exponentially because I have something I want to share here. This little guy. This is when I started, this little pocket dictionary from Webster of all the internet sites from the 90s when I started in tech. This was how big the internet was.
What is that?
This is it. This is it.
I'm sorry. I want to look for one of those. It's a pocket.
The pocket internet dictionary from Prodigy from back in the 90s. This is the one book of all my tech books that I have saved because this started off. I lived in this little guy. And it's all the internet websites. That was it. That's how big the internet was. And it was so small back then. But now, if you try to categorize that now, the book would be insatiable. But that being said, it just goes to show back then there was liabilities, right? I mean, back then there was a lot of new things coming out and software had tons of holes and it was built very loosely. Even now, it's still the same. And now it's just so much more prevalent. So when you think about liability in your MSP or your business, you have to realize your surface of liability is vast, right? And I think that you have to be very cognizant of how you're approaching that because you are now delivering that to your customers, right? So you do have some liability and some exposure there.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think at the end of the day, we need to be trying to make sure that solutions that we're placing have security in mind. I think it's unrealistic to think that every solution that we place is going to be super secure and that there's going to be no CVEs. There will always be problems.
Yeah.
Always. It's IT. Let's be realistic. Software breaks, things go wrong. It is IT. That's why we all work in IT because we recognize it. But I think realistically, try to partner with solutions. Try to look for solutions that are trying to solve these things as easy as possible. Yeah.
And I just as a business owner, right? I think we have to recognize the seat at the table that we have. Businesses are looking to us security. And the worst thing you want to do is be bringing a payload right through the front door and be like, nah, don't worry about it. You'll be all right. You know what I mean? So that being said, Ben, I mean, what are some of the ways that you see the ability? You talked about ring fencing. What are some of the other tactics around, limiting that liability and application vulnerability?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, number one, don't run applications you don't need. Like that's a pretty
Yeah.
straightforward thing there. Yeah, on machines, if we look at a machine that probably hasn't been reinstalled in the last 5 years, you are going to find a lot of applications in there that are no longer used. Those one-off applications that you've installed, and because you have an SSD in your machine, it's very, very quick. So we don't think about it now. We just kind of go yes, install, and
Right.
it sits there. And these applications have full access to our data. So realistically, we then need to try to look at these applications and do I need this on my machine still? Should I be allowing this to exist here and to coexist with my other applications?
Right.
And further from there, minimize what those apps can access. So we spoke about that ring fencing piece earlier of limiting it from accessing certain files, such as your protected files is what I'm kind of referencing there, your documents, desktop downloads, etc., that kind of stuff. Stop applications from accessing the internet. But go further than that as well. Limit what network devices they can access. Network shares, for example, file and folder locations. Lock that down fully. Because if an app is installed, it has full access across the board. Well, we talk about it in the concept of ransomware. When ransomware gets in, it accesses NFS, CIFS, SMB shares to try and infect your data. All an app vulnerability is doing is just not infecting your data. It wants to maybe steal your data. Someone can get in through remote code execution, and then they can access your data and steal your data. Then they've got all the company secrets. Imagine if that happened at KFC, stole the 11 herbs and spices recipe kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's when it comes to that piece, we need to make sure that we are deploying as many solutions as possible to try and to protect our data and our users. And there's a few different ways in which obviously that can be done.
And it's very interesting you mentioned that, right? And I think that a lot of us as MSP business owners or just owners of businesses, even at that, we don't really anticipate. And I think that for those of you that are out there today that are MSPs that are taking this, and again, kudos to you for being here today to learn more about it. Because I always say that the more you know, the better off you are, and the more you can empower your customer to be successful. But if you are able to show them the security solutions that protect them from themselves, because hey, I'm not saying that I don't need these tools. We probably do need these tools, but here's the thing. One of the great things about it is that I have a tool that will help you stop the opportunity. And that's where I think we get that seat at the table and we have to take it seriously. A, on your service contracts, B, on your communications with your customer. I think all of these things are really key to making sure that you're doing the right thing and educating your customer about the opportunity, telling them, hey, look, I didn't mean to bring that software in. I didn't make it.
Yeah. And I think that's really key as well. You just used a key word that I had a couple of talks today at the event that we were at, and I used a key word there that I was using throughout the whole thing. It's educate.
Yeah.
As much as good vendors like to educate MSPs and IT professionals, it is down to the MSPs and the IT professionals to educate the user and to educate the businesses that they are supporting as to why it is that you need this piece of this tool to be able to protect yourself. Obviously, it's part of the selling process. And I think if we can educate our users and bring our users along this journey of cybersecurity, they're going to be more brought in. They're going to be more interested in this. They're going to understand things a lot more. And this can be done in a multitude of ways. Again, partner with vendors, they'll have content on they'll have documentation, all that kind of stuff. And they may even do demos. So I know in a past life, I used to run ransomware demos. And that is something that we actually will still do here at ThreatLocker if people are interested in that. We'll run ransomware demos and show how the solution can stop ransomware or other vulnerabilities. So demonstrations are another kind of key way that I actually find is a great way to be able to help people understand, because it's obviously very, very visual. It's hard to miss when it's right in front of your eyes.
Yeah. I remember one time bringing a wireless device, set it up inside of a conference that I was doing, and I told everyone to jump on the guest Wi-Fi at the beginning of my talk. And my wife advised me against this, but I did it anyways because I wanted to illustrate it. And I ran Wireshark, just a basic Wireshark across it.
Yeah.
And I scanned everybody's information the whole time, and then went and decrypted some of it and actually presented it back to the group and said, "This is how easy it is. That's it." And they were like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me right now?" But they got more out of that demonstration than they probably did out of everything that I said there.
100%. Now, so Zero Trust World in February of this year, 2022, we had Danny and myself were on stage, and we were talking about I think it was a quick fire round of threats that are out there, threats that are happening, how people are getting into networks, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just a slide. This is the threat. This is what you can do. Bang, on to the next one. It was like 2 minutes on each piece. And at the end of it, we did a 10-minute talk piece on Wi-Fi pineapples.
Yep.
Now, we're going slightly off topic here from vulnerabilities, so we'll keep it nice and short. But Wi-Fi pineapples are incredibly cool for those of you who have not found them. They essentially, when your phone is not on Wi-Fi, it's broadcasting out looking for any of the guest networks or open wireless networks that it may have joined in the past. And from there, this Wi-Fi pineapple, it's this like box with a ton of antennas coming off of it. Looks like a pineapple, you could say. Will pick up those signals saying, hey, is this SSID out here? Is this SSID out here? And it will then create that SSID and then broadcast it. So when this pineapple is then plugged into the network or connected to another Wi-Fi device, it essentially acts as a man in the middle, and it can then read all your traffic, and you can forward on a Google Auth piece.
Mm-hmm.
So when you log into your Google account, it says, oh, have you put in your username and password, that kind of stuff. You can send one that looks exactly like that. And in a matter of a couple of seconds, you can have someone's login credentials. So it is incredibly scary. These kind of different tools that you can utilize out there.
And I didn't go that far. I just wanted to illustrate the simplistic.
No, that's good.
Yeah. My wife was like, "Don't do it, babe. I'm telling you, don't do it. Because if you do it, they're going to freak out and they're going to think you hacked them and you're going to have a big problem." I did it in a much smaller way, but it was still fun. And I just want to illustrate the fact that demonstrations go a long way for those that are struggling to have conversations with their customers about it. Talking about CVEs, talking about app vulnerabilities, talking about all these different opportunities, presenting customers with information to make better decisions is really, to your point, you talk about the sales cycle. It's all about education. The more they know, the more they're going to make a smarter decision. And I know that a lot of MSPs struggle with having that talk. And it's like, okay, so for those of you again here today that are learning, you're doing a good job because that's where you start. And I really appreciate that. We got a guest in here from Arsam. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. But it says his guess for how many CVEs were identified in 2021 it was 28,695. We're not going to say if that's right or wrong just yet, but could be. So again, the trivia question, how many CVEs were identified in 2021? Ben's going to be giving away a couple free tickets for those 2 lucky people that guess it right today. So please put your input in the chat. If you got questions too, also put your questions in there. We'd love to hear some more of that. So let's talk about a little bit more. So obviously we've come to a point here, Ben, where we understand zero trust is a must, right? And what is that? Let's just kind of dive into that a little bit. Obviously, we talked about the liability for a business owner, also liability on the customer side, really understand the education, but zero trust, let's break it down for those that maybe don't know a lot about zero trust. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, zero trust is the idea of providing the least privilege to users, network devices, realistically anything on your network. And the reason that I think we need this is because right now we implicitly trust anything to join our network. Someone comes in that we know and, oh, can I join your Wi-Fi to be able to send a couple of emails? Yeah, sure, why not? Here you go, here's the password. We're implicitly trusting that their device is safe, which is a terrible idea. We've all seen what's on people's computers, right? Like,
I won't let you get on my home network, Ben, just FYI.
Exactly, right? Like, I've seen, my mum's computer is horrific. I don't need that. complete mess of like icons everywhere and all that. I don't need that on my home network.
Yeah.
Because who knows what these computers are bringing? Like viruses, malware. Malware often likes to sit on machines for up to 90 days at a time before it starts to run through and infect anything. Even if it's, say, ransomware, for example, it will wait normally so that it can get into a backup chain, so that when you recover back to your backups, you're screwed. Kind of. Now, what if I've got a piece of malware on that machine that when I plug it in, it then starts to propagate across my network? So we realistically, we need to move away from this implicit trust to a default deny approach, which is an implicit not trust. I always struggle with trying to find a great term for that there. But implicitly not trusting devices to just be okay on my networks. We need to start shifting over from there. And that realistically is what zero trust is. It is essentially saying, I should not be trusting these devices, these users on my network, because I don't know enough about them. And obviously, we do that for a few different ways: app whitelisting, allow listing, deny by default, default deny. It has a few different terms that people like to try and use. But very, very simply, it's only allowing the specific files you want to execute to be able to execute. That's it. Pure and simple. Nice and easy. Ring fencing we spoke about earlier, which is you're allowed to run, but you can only access X, Y, and Z. Elevation control, take away admin rights from users, but allow them to run apps as an individual or individual apps as an administrator. Really cool. And then storage control, obviously, on from there. USB blocking, limit what files, folders, applications are able to access. Now, this is how we implement zero trust architecture. There are a few different providers that do provide zero trust. But we believe this is kind of one of the best ways to go down the zero trust endpoint security route, locking down your laptops, desktops, and your servers.
It's pretty interesting. You think about it now in these current status, like when you fire up a machine now versus when you used to fire up a machine, let's say back in the Windows XP days, if you had Windows XP Professional or whatever. And again, I'm dating myself now, right? But I didn't go all the way back to 95, right? But from that, you had an opportunity to set administration controls and you could do certain things. And I think one of the biggest pain points we saw as MSPs was anytime you lock down a machine and take away admin rights, because that was like the first thing we did, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was like, I don't want to do that. So then they start buying Chromebooks, or they start buying Macs, or they start buying all these other things. Like the control created an additional output. And we started seeing all these new devices flood into our management suite, right? So they were like, haha, admin, you can't lock me down now because I'm on a Mac, right? Or haha, you can't do it because I'm on a some sort of Google or Android type device. And so it's really interesting to see the techniques and tools that we've had to adopt to be able to support those types of devices. And what you just said was music to my ears, because it's like for so long we've been trying to figure out how to like manage the edge and without jumping off it, right? Sometimes it feels like, all right, I'm done, I'm out. So I love it, but really, really great stuff there. As far as digging into zero trust, what are some other tactics or tips that you might have for our audience today, Ben?
So you were just talking there about users bringing in Chromebooks, MacBooks, etc. Have it so that it's purely only devices that have had their MAC address that are documented that are allowed to join the network. Like that right there stops anyone from being able to bring their devices onto the network unless they can do some Mac spoofing, which, let's be realistic, none of the users are going to know how to do Mac spoofing. It's again, I think when it comes down to security, we're trying to make no solution is ever 100% foolproof. We spoke about it earlier. No piece of software is ever going to be 100% not buggy. And there will always be a problem with any piece of software, whether it be security tools, whether it be backup tools, whether it be RMM tools. There will always be problems that will happen because that is part and parcel of IT. So I guess making sure that the solutions that you're putting in place are trying to make life a little bit harder for the threat actor. And that is, another piece of what we're doing now with saying that only XYZ MAC addresses are allowed on my network.
Right. I will say this, one of the blind sides that I think a lot of people miss is this little guy right here. right? It's the phone, right? So a lot of
They're
people don't
computers.
think they're
They
like,
are.
I say it all the time. It's like, we're trying to protect the endpoint, but we often forget about this little guy, right? And this little guy I can do everything from this now. I mean, literally everything. Everything I have is in the cloud. So like if I lost my laptop, it would be no big deal to me because I can do everything from my phone. And we don't often look as that as a transport layer. And I think we talked about last week where you talked about malware cruising across common file sharing apps, right? And it's
Yes.
like we forget. It's like, where did it come from? And it's like, well, it might have come from a mobile device.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. I mean, threat actors are becoming so clever. I spoke about it in last week's chat. These threat actors, without sounding like I'm on their side, they're pretty brilliant. They are very, very clever people. They know these OSs inside and out. They know exactly what they're looking for. They're always constantly looking. They're problem solvers. They're puzzle solvers there. And our job as IT professionals is to try and stay that one step ahead of them as much as we can. But it's always going to be hard doing that. And I mean, they're going to be constantly looking at new solutions like how can I attack a mobile phones that when it's on a network, it can then broadcast and send out whatever. So yeah, realistically, IT security doesn't end at the endpoint. It doesn't end just at your laptop or your server. It is about all devices that you're bringing onto your network.
And that's where I think, again, remembering the fact of where we started off, how vulnerability is not good for operations. It's making sure you're paying attention to all the vulnerabilities. Sometimes we get tunnel vision as we start staring down the road here, and we only look at these one things, but we got to be cognizant of all of the ecosystem that's spinning around in our orbit. And really congrats to you guys on building something amazing. That's really awesome. And I thank you for doing that because it was well needed and it's much needed in the industry. So again, real quick, we had a trivia question today, and Ben, I want to just circle back around. What was the trivia question for our audience? I want to see.
Yeah. So, how many CVEs were reported in 2021?
All right. So two lucky winners are going to win 2 tickets today. We already got one guess in here. We got a couple more. It looks like there's some chatter going on out there. So, one of the big things is we get ready for Build It Live 2022. It's all about MSP education, just like today's event. And it was really, really exciting to hear new tactics, new ways of doing business. Obviously, focusing on, how to protect the customer, how to protect your business, how to grow your business. We're really excited to have you guys come join us at Build It, Ben. And I think that, I'm getting used to having you on the show, but unfortunately, I think this is our number two. I'm going to have to see if I can invite you back.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm going to speak to the marketing team and see if they can just like set this up as a weekly thing because I love this. This is awesome. So yeah, definitely.
And I brought a cool book, right? So
Yeah.
there's that.
I've already looked. I can get the second edition on
Yeah.
Amazon for $4.99. So
Nice.
I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna order that to the office, and then next time I'm in the US, I'm gonna be picking that up because yes,
It's a must have. It's a must
I'm
have.
sold on this. Yeah.
The things that we find in the tech ecosphere, man, there's so many good things. I'm
Oh yeah.
looking forward to seeing you demo the rubber ducky at our event. Like that is
Yes.
looking forward to.
So that's going to be really, really fun. I'm going to be showing, so for those of you who are unaware, I am going to be showing how a little device called a rubber ducky, which, yeah, it's over there. It looks just like a USB, but when you plug it into your machine, it acts as a keyboard and then runs whatever line of code you have on it.
Yeah.
So it is a very, very cool piece of kit that threat actors, they do use, but it's kind of a proof of concept piece.
Right.
And they are genuinely insane. So I'm going to show a little bit of that actually at the show, and yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. And hopefully we'll have a bit of a training piece so we can kind of train people who are interested in that, how the syntax works, how these devices actually work, and then you can go ahead and test them on your own networks and never use them for bad at all because we cannot condone that.
Yes. Well, I love it. I'm really excited about it. So the inside of me is like this internal geek, right? So I definitely will be sitting in on that, and I'll be in the back for sure on my hardened laptop that has no access to any of you guys in the room.
Yes. What I do is I just don't bring my personal laptops to those
Yeah.
events, and I just leave them in the hotel room, and I do not join any Wi-Fi networks because I don't trust anyone. I've learned can't trust any of them.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of us having fun, I'm sure, at the event. And I'm looking forward to everyone that comes and joins us as well. We're really excited to have everybody come in. And this year's event, obviously, we have some big keynote speakers. Mike McKelowitz is coming to join us. We got Kevin Brown that's coming to join us. And our third major announcement was Eli Manning. For those of you that are football fans, we're going to be at MetLife Stadium, have a great time with him and get some signatures done. For those of you that haven't registered, make sure that you do that. You guys have seen the text across the bottom down there. Make sure that you register because there's going to be 25 lucky winners that get drawn to have a conversation and meet Eli Manning and get some signatures as well as some really cool pictures. So really looking forward to having a bunch of all of you come join us. It's all about having fun. Don't forget today's code is vulnerability 200 to get your $200 ticket for Build It Live 2022. Again, I think I messed up this morning. I think I said it was still Sunday. I was wrong. It's today only. Thank you. Thank you to our sponsor, Threat Locker, today for doing that. Vulnerability 200. And I'm going to have to get after our marketing team for that one.
I would say whoever created that, like they have it out for you. That's yeah.
It could have been supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, right? And then 200.
That's okay because that's got like a little ring to it. It's got a rhyme. You can kind of sing it, and it's what no. It's that's a tongue twister.
Vulnerability 200 for today. That's going to be the one. That's my trivia for the day. How to say that. So, real quick, let's talk about it. Let me see here. I think we got our winner for today's drawing, and it looks like it. Ben, if you want to go ahead and confirm here, it looks like our trivia question. What was our trivia question, real quick?
So the trivia question is: how many CVEs were released or reported in 2021?
And we got two people here.
Yeah, so it was about 28,000. Is the kind of depending on the publication you go with. If you're going with CV details or Security Weekly, etc., that kind of stuff. But it's around 28,000 from last year. So it's pretty insane the amount of CVs that are out there, especially from last year. And again, it's only going to get larger. We've been seeing dramatic increases every year.
And can you see the two winners here, Ben?
I can. So it looks like we have got Awesome, who has won, and we have also got Ray Young, who has won. So congrats, guys.
Congrats, you guys. Good job. 28,000 in the house. That's staggering, though. I mean, just to think about that, I guess I need to see the year breakdown. Now we're going to have to like go back and look at those stats real quick. Because if there's 130,000 since 95, and we got a quarter of that, well, not necessarily a quarter, maybe a fourth, eighth of that in last year. Could you imagine? I mean, and you said how many are this year already been?
We have 7,000 this year already.
It sounds like we're going to break it. And that's just wild. I mean, but think about it. How many softwares are coming out every week? I mean, every time you turn around, I still miss my flashlight app though.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. We have these vulnerabilities that come out every week. 3 weeks ago we had the 7-zip vulnerability. We had Log4j December 11th. Early last year, or was it mid last year, we had Print Nightmare. So we have these huge vulnerabilities that we're aware of, but we have also got loads of small ones as well that are coming out as well.
It's the one that you're not paying attention that's going to get you. And then that's the one that's going to be ultimately, you're going to be thinking about your business, seriously. And again, best advice I can give you is those that you haven't looked at your liability and your contracts, make sure you're doing the right thing. To your point, Ben, partner with the right partners to make sure that you're working with somebody that's protecting you as you are trying to protect your customers. And ultimately, best advice I can give you too is cybersecurity liability insurance. If you're not doing it, you need to be. And then thirdly, you need to have your customers doing it too. So, make sure that you're giving that advice as well. And I'm not a lawyer or anybody out there, but I just want to see everyone be successful and be protected in this crazy world we live in these days. So, Ben, well, my friend, I think that brings us to the end. Again, everybody that's here, Build It Live 2022, July 27th through 29th. We're looking forward to seeing you. Congrats on the winners today. Remember, for those of you that are registering, vulnerability 200 is the code for today. Make sure you click on register. Make sure you get that. Go to builditlive.net so that you guys can get all the details and get up to date. You guys can like, subscribe, and come back next week for another amazing webinar where I will be missing Ben, but I will have another great speaker.
I'm sure they will be absolutely wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm sure this won't be the last time. And obviously, I hope to be back here soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this week, and look forward for our next trailer next Wednesday. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks again, Ben, and thanks, ThreatLocker.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.